honestly, I get really bothered when I see these ads or influencers or people who are like, I just took a quiz and they prescribed personalized supplements. No, like a quiz can't tell you what your blood levels are. Hi, I'm Sarina. Welcome back to my channel, and for those of you that are new here, I have been vegan my entire life. And in today's video, I'm going to share a little bit with you about my perspective on taking vitamins and supplements as a vegan and which ones I take and why. Make sure you watch all the way through to the end because I share a little bit of special information about blood testing and how you can also figure out what vitamins you should be taking. The reason people frequently ask vegans what supplements they should be taking is because there's this notion that somehow vegan diets are nutritionally inadequate, or you are more likely to be deficient of certain nutrients and vitamins when you cut out animal-based foods and start eating exclusively plants. And therefore, to be healthy, vegans have to take supplements. Now, I'm not saying that is not true, and I do recommend supplementation. However, supplementation is not a vegan-specific issue. Both vegan diets and non-vegan diets probably should be supplementing a number of things in today's society. If we look at who is actually suffering more, what diseases are actually killing, especially Americans more, one of the biggest things that most people are deficient in is fiber. Yet, when someone says that they're gonna continue eating a non-vegan diet, we don't hear people come out and say, oh, how are you gonna get enough fiber? So I just wanna put this into context first and say that a vegan diet, I do not believe, is any less deficient than a non-vegan diet, and in many ways is healthier and better and more likely to get you the phytochemicals, nutrients, and fiber that you actually need to live a healthy life. Now that I have said that, let's actually talk about what supplements I take and recommend that if you are transitioning to a vegan diet and way of living, you should also look into taking. Let's start with B12. This is one of the most common ones that people bring up as something that you can't get from plants or eating a whole foods plant-based diet. It is true that most things that we are eating on a plant-based or vegan diet do not contain B12, and we as vegans are not getting enough B12 in our diet from just what we're eating. Now let me explain why, because there's a lot of confusion around this. People often think that B12 is naturally in meat or naturally made in meat or something like that, and so we're missing it when we're not eating meat. But the truth is, B12 is actually made by a bacteria that is found in dirt and soil. And once upon a time, back when we were living out in the wild, foraging for food, or not living in as sanitary and hygienic of a society, we were getting a lot more bacterial contaminants and dirt, including B12, in our diet. Today, however, we live in a much more clean and hygienic society where we sterilize things, we wash our food so much better. We don't just pick a carrot up out of the garden and eat it with the dirt still on it, which are the types of things that we kind of used to do. So most people, vegan or not, would likely not be getting adequate amounts of B12 just from the food they're eating today if it weren't for the fact that we actually inject cows with B12. There's also a lot more bacteria in industrial farms and how animals are raised today that gets into their gut. They're slaughtered with feces still in their gut sometimes, and that can get into the food and supply chain. So what we really see is that B12 naturally comes in the soil and dirt. Nobody's getting enough of that, but we've fixed that in the non-vegan world by injecting cows with B12 so that people do get it when they're eating meat. Vegans, however, do miss out on that, and therefore I think we should be taking a B12 supplement. And I have been taking a B12 supplement most of my life, and it's one that I continue to take today. Probably, honestly, the only supplement that I regularly take or manage to take on any sort of regular basis. I take it probably 3 times a week, and I take an under-the-tongue dissolvable lozenge, and I think that's really important because there is a lot of research indicating that if you just swallow a B12 pill, we don't absorb it in our gut as well than if we actually dissolve it in our mouth under our tongue first. The other vitamin that you probably want to think about taking is vitamin D. Now, vitamin D is not actually a vitamin, and again, this is not actually a vegan problem. Vitamin D is a hormone that is produced under the skin when you come into contact with sunlight. So it's not something that anyone would naturally be getting from their food. However, similar to B12, we actually fortify cow's milk with vitamin D. Most non-vegans are getting more vitamin D in their diet than vegans are, but it's not because it's natural. It is not because meat and dairy actually somehow have more vitamin D in them than plant foods. It's something that we get from sun exposure. That said, especially because we don't all live around the equator anymore, most people are not getting enough sun exposure to make adequate amounts of vitamin D. So we have to get it some other way. And I have supplemented vitamin D, although I do not do this regularly in the summer, but through the winter months, because I live here in the Midwest where it is cloudy and dark, and I definitely am not going outside or getting enough sun exposure. So I take a vegan vitamin D3 supplement several times a week throughout the winter. Omega-3s and fish oil are probably something that you've heard a lot about. In the last few years, this has become a really hot topic, something that doctors and nutritionists and the media are promoting all over the place as being really important for brain functioning, for preventing heart disease, and having a number of other benefits as well. And so most people are hearing about you should take fish oil. But the beneficial thing in fish oil is really the omega-3 fatty acids, which fish don't produce on their own. Fish are getting it from eating algae, which is where the omega-3 fatty acids actually come from. So of course, we as vegans can just go straight to the source, skip the animal, skip the fish oil, and eat the plants such as seaweeds or an extract from seaweeds or flaxseed, a number of other plant-based foods that actually contain a pretty decent source of omega-3 fatty acids. I do try to eat a lot of flaxseed in smoothies and in things I'm making, sometimes oatmeal, but I don't always eat it consistently. I don't use it enough often. So I do supplement with a vegan omega-3 supplement that comes from algae. I don't always take this regularly, and to be honest, I am really bad about forgetting it, and I've never noticed anything one way or the other, but I have read the science suggesting that it is good to make sure that your balance of omega-3s and omega-6s is adequate, and usually we get too many omega-6 fatty acids, and so that fish oil or that algae, that vegan omega-3 supplement helps balance out our omega-3s and omega-6s. So when it comes to other minerals like calcium and iron, these, I think, take a little bit of a different analysis. Those are things that we should be able to get from the plant-based foods that we are eating if we are eating an adequate, well-rounded, whole foods plant-based diet. Of course, not all vegans are doing that. Veganism is not explicitly about being healthy. It's about not exploiting animals. So there are plenty of people that are not eating enough leafy greens, that are not getting the adequate calcium and iron just from their diet. I have never had a problem with calcium, and I'm not going to go into that one today, so I do not take a calcium supplement, but I have taken an iron supplement, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of my story as to why. Females, on average, have a lot tougher time maintaining their iron levels due to menstruation. So I started running cross country partway through my college. As part of our pre-cross country season medical exam, we were all supposed to get an iron blood test, since cross country runners really need to have their iron levels up, and it can affect your performance and health if you are running with too low of iron levels. And so I actually got a blood test where I got my iron levels tested. And I was surprised to find that they were on the lower edge. That said, I just want to be clear that over half, if not close to 2/3 of my entire cross-country team, all of whom were not vegan except for me, all had significantly low iron. Several people had iron so low that they were not allowed to run for the first few weeks until they got their iron levels up. So again, this is not a vegan problem. This is more of a female menstruation problem, and somehow probably none of us eating enough iron in our diet or eating adequate amounts of those dark leafy green vegetables. So I have been working to do that more, and sometimes I would eat, foods that are high in vitamin C paired with foods that have more iron to help absorption. But in cross country, I decided I needed to start taking an iron supplement. And so I found an herbal gentle iron that has never given me any digestive or stomach issues, because some people that take iron find that it's a little rough on their stomach. So I've used an herbal iron that I have not had that issue with at all, and I would highly recommend. And I did start supplementing with this regularly, and I got my blood tested a year later, and my iron levels had come up. So that's what brings me to my final thing here, which is blood testing, I think, is extremely, extremely important if you want to know what vitamins and minerals you actually should be supplementing. Multiple times in my life, I have gotten blood tests to see how my B12 levels, how my vitamin D levels, how my iron levels were, and other minerals and hormones and all of that, just for a general health checkup. I've also measured my vitamin D levels in blood tests and seen that in the winter they do dip lower, and so I supplement, and in the summer they are right in the mid-range, and I seem to have no problems at all. But the two most important ones that I personally think, if you are transitioning to a plant-based diet and want to make sure that you are doing it as well as possible, you need to be taking a B12 and a vitamin D supplement. These two can really affect so many different things that we don't even often connect with them. B12 in elderly people has been linked with dementia. So I do recommend looking into those, and I also recommend getting a blood test. So see what your levels are like when you start eating a plant-based diet, or before that. Whatever it is, don't just supplement blindly in the dark with a lot of these things, because you have no idea how much your body is actually absorbing or how much you actually have stored in your blood. So talk to a doctor, order an online blood test, anything like that. But that data, that scientific approach, I think is extremely important. And I really, honestly, I get really bothered when I see these ads or influencers or people who are like, I just took a quiz and they prescribed personalized supplements. No. Like, a quiz can't tell you what your blood levels are. So I think that's a little ridiculous, honestly. Blood tests are the only thing that are really gonna tell you where your levels are at. Blood testing is especially important if you have maybe transitioned to a plant-based or vegan diet and you're one of those people that are saying, I don't have enough energy, or I don't feel well, like I feel better when I eat meat and dairy, or something like that. This is what you hear from a lot of ex-vegans as well. And that is especially important that you get blood test, because you might actually be deficient in something. It may or may not be related to what you're eating, but there's a good chance that you are deficient in something, and figuring out what that actually is would allow you to supplement and continue thriving on a vegan diet. So make sure, if you are new to my channel, that you hit that subscribe button below and give this video a big like, and make sure that you hit that bell button when you subscribe so that you actually get notified when I release another video next week. And if you haven't gone vegan yet, or you are curious about how to actually go vegan, make sure you check out this video right here, where I give you my beginner's guide to going vegan and my top 5 tips for how to actually make that transition. All right, I will see you next week.